So in the last video, I was talking about the triune brain. But of course, this is a particular way of using language to describe certain things. And the most important thing about the triune brain, and any way that we look at the brain, is that actually there are areas which perhaps function more specifically with certain things, but everything is particularly connected. So our feelings, our thoughts, our body are all absolutely joined up and connected. You may even have heard that there are a lot of synaptic connections all over the body. For instance, many of us will have spoken of having a gut feeling about something, or butterflies in your stomach. So actually, some people call it the second brain in the stomach. We always associate the brain with being in the head, but actually our whole body is linked up. And so in relation to that, I'd like to say a few words about the fight or flight reaction. Now, this is something that many of you will have heard of, and there's of course freeze, which is slightly different. But anyway, today I'm talking about fight or flight, and why really in a way this has evolved and why it can be very useful to us. So fear is absolutely essential to our survival. And historically, there would have been predators in our environment, so we really needed to react in milliseconds. So at the first sign of threat, actually sometimes even below consciousness, signals are sent to the amygdala, which is a little part in the brain, which is really like our alert center, the fear center. It's like, alert central. And that then gives rise to all sorts of bodily consequences. Adrenaline is released, stress hormone, adrenaline is released, our heart will beat faster, we will breathe more deeply so that our lungs can really expand, and the blood will circulate principally to our big muscle groups, the legs, in order to, all the big muscle groups that are needed to take action, and therefore either to flee or to fight. Now, this evolved for very good reasons. As I said, there were predators around. But now most of the external dangers, let's say, are not as prevalent as they were through our history, through our evolution. Of course, now we are faced with this pandemic, which is an absolute external threat. But it's not in the same range as actually something that's coming towards you to attack you or to kill you. Now, if the brain is really tailored for that particular kind of attack, the prefrontal cortex, the capacity to think, to analyze, is really not useful at all. Because you're not going to say, oh, there's a tiger, he's about 2 meters away from me, and at this velocity he will reach me, so I need to take this action. That would be absolutely redundant, because milliseconds matter, which is why the body reacts in such an instant and powerful way. So now that there are fewer threats in the outside environment, we are still faced with something quite extraordinary, which is that our body reacts to threat coming from our own thoughts. That is actually often what threatens us. So this sort of projecting into the future, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or ruminating over the past, why did I do this, or why did that person behave in that kind of a way. These actually are reacted to by our brain as if they were threats. They are threatening thoughts. And of course, one of the biggest ones is the inner critic. You're useless, you're hopeless, nobody likes you, all that kind of thing. This is why many of the practices that we do through mindfulness are fantastically helpful, because they would enable us to see, is this really a threat or is it not a threat? Do I need to react, take action, flee or fight, or is there another way of looking at what's going on? You may have heard, it's really, I guess it comes from Buddhism, this concept of the 2 arrows. The 2 arrows. One of them is the pain that you may feel inevitably because of things that happen in the world. So it could be grief, or it could be, it could be the loss of somebody, or it could be betrayal, it could be losing your job, all kinds of realities which are deeply, deeply painful. And they're what we call the first arrow. the first arrow of pain, which in most times you can do nothing about. They are happening to you or they're happening from the outside world. But the second arrow is linked to how we react to this initial hurt. Do we blame ourselves? Do we blame others? Do we think, oh, why did this happen? Do we kind of go on and on and on in loops, which often are even more painful than the original pain? Even in relation to physical pain, for instance, you might get get wounded. But then if you go on and on, why did I trip? Why did I fall? Oh, why did that person do this? We get tangled up in a sort of web, which then becomes very difficult to get out of. So it's really important to understand and realize that our threat system reacts to thoughts. And this is one of the main reasons why mindfulness can be so helpful, because it's what I call pressing the pause button. Take stock, look at the situation, allow your prefrontal cortex to come back into play, to look at the situation, to analyze the situation, and to think, okay, what am I feeling right now? What am I thinking? What is my body telling me? And then we can take steps which are really there to nurture our well-being, to foster a sense of optimism, even when things are extremely hard and extremely difficult, to give us the resilience to carry on as best we can. So that's my little contribution for today. I hope you found it somewhat helpful. Thank you.